If you want this whole mindfulness thing demystified, stay tuned.
Welcome to the Sanity Project podcast, where you can awaken your mind to clarity and success even in today's life challenges. We're here to provide insights and solutions that will help you live a sane, healthy, and prosperous life. Here's your host, Joanne Victoria.
Our guest today is Shelley Brown. Shelley Brown believes, and that's in uppercase letters, people, mindfulness is not what we've all been led to believe. Rather than a focus on what's often seen as woo-woo, weird, and uncomfortable approaches, Shelley knows it's a practice of rock stars, a practice that can transcend calm, a practice that trains our brains to embrace and extend time in the present, providing the foundations of self-awareness, increased resilience, and greater well-being. Hello, everybody. I'm Joanne Victoria, the host of the Sanity Project podcast, and you are here, my listeners, to discover a life of clarity, confidence, and success. Shelley has spent over 2 decades in the corporate world, and today she remains connected to the business world as a keynote speaker, webinar and workshop facilitator, inviting leaders and teams to a practice that trains our brains to achieve remarkable calm, focus, and resilience. The end result? Well, let's have Shelley tell us all about it. Welcome to the show, Shelley Brown.
Thank you so much, Joanne. I'm so happy to be here with you.
I'm so great that you are here because I love mindfulness. And when I saw that you were talking about it in the way you were, because everybody has their own perspective and not always the one that's most beneficial. And for you to be here to demystify this whole mindfulness thing and why mindfulness matters in our lives is a gift to our audience. So what can you tell us about how you decided to work in mindfulness or teach mindfulness and practice it?
Sure. So first of all, I love the fact that this is called the Sanity Project because I literally came to mindfulness after going quote unquote insane. And basically, I would like to say that I come from a worried people, and I learned how to be this incredible warrior from people who taught me to go from zero to catastrophe in seconds. And so that's kind of how I rolled. And I had a pretty successful career in the corporate world, and I became an ultra marathoner. And in one fell swoop, my vertebrae collapsed and crushed the nerves going down my spine. And that kind of catapulted me into fight or flight, which is how I came to mindfulness. That's sort of in a nutshell how I came to the practice. But what I soon discovered is that it far surpasses just being calm. It literally is the foundation of self-awareness. And so that to me is what mindfulness is all about.
And I think that's why we're here on this earth, to be self-aware.
I couldn't agree more. And a lot of people, they know it's important, but they don't really know what it means or how to practice it. And to me, mindfulness is really the only way to practice self-awareness, because the only way to be self-aware is to know how you are being right in the moment. So practicing how you're being is what mindfulness is to me. And of course, it certainly can help cultivate calm and help cultivate resilience and all these awesome things. But I think the most important part of mindfulness is that it can help us show up better for others. Nobody cares if you're calm or resilient if you're not showing up well, right?
Right. Yes. It's people. There's a confusion about it, and I'm glad that's why I want you here to discuss this. When people are advised to be self-aware and they're provided with tools, one of them being mindfulness, which I think is the best one, has the highest and best use for self-awareness, they don't really understand what they're accomplishing when they do accomplish it, the self-awareness aspect, when they're showing up. They don't know what it means not only to show up, but how to present themselves. how to be, whether they're, healthy looking, healthy feeling, mentally stable. Yes, the sanity, which is one of the reasons I titled this podcast that. It's very complex.
It is. It's very complex, and it really has a lot to do with being in alignment with our own values, being able to know when we're out of alignment with our own truths and our own values. And rather than just showing up in a way that we think other people want us to show up, or showing up in a way that has to do with things that aren't really integral to who we are in our value system, that's what kind of overshadows our ability to walk our walk.
Yeah, too many people are still in high school with a needing approval thing. I'll label it that professional term, a thing. And they need permission first from others, and then they want the approval. And, that's tied up in a knot with that permission. And it doesn't work like that. What others think of you, doesn't matter, especially if you're not showing up as yourself.
Right. And obviously there's many of us that do walk this planet worried about other people's approvals, and it's a real thing, and it can cause a lot of fear and stress and worry, and that's literally the suffering. And what mindfulness can help with is really putting distance between the thought and our reaction to it, so that we can actually disrupt these patterns and change our own patterns of behavior. Because when you can ascertain whether a thought that you're thinking is the truth, or allowing it to pass, and realizing that you are the driver of the horse isn't the driver of you, that is when we can really take charge of how we are being.
Yeah, absolutely. People like to give up their power to get this approval, and don't understand that they are in charge. I mean, as much as anybody can be in charge, we are in charge of our own lives. And
sorry, go ahead.
No, you go.
No, that is very, very true. And I was one of those people who pretty much lived in a constant state of stress, because I felt that need to have the approval of others. And it really wasn't, it was just my own narrative. It wasn't coming from anyone else. And so when we can see the story we're telling ourselves, when we can literally observe how our mind makes meaning, and that is through the practice of mindfulness, we can essentially disrupt those patterns. So I certainly don't fault anybody. We all come by that behavior very honestly. But when we realize that it doesn't serve us and that we have choice, that's where real freedom comes into play, so that we don't have to be stuck in this pattern and say, oh, that's the way I've always been. We can literally change. But it does take knowing how we are being, how we are showing up, how our body senses things, how the feeling tones of those sensations affect the thoughts that come to our brain. And then again, that sort of neuro pattern of behavior can be disrupted, but we have to be able to see it first.
So what would you say someone who's listening now because they liked the topic and they're in to listen and to learn, what would be a first step you can give someone to understand their own mindfulness and learn their own self-awareness? What's the first thing they can do?
So obviously educating themselves on mindfulness would be the first thing. I am a big proponent of meditation. And you don't have to call it meditation. You can call it brain training. You can call it awareness training. You can call it bicep curls for the brain muscles, because a lot of people don't like the word meditation. But meditation is literally to mindfulness what working out is to being fit. So it is practicing the noticing muscle. And the more you practice the noticing muscle, a lot of people think that meditation is, okay, just still your mind and clear the thoughts. Well, if you clear your mind of thoughts, that means you're dead and nobody.
Oh, God.
It's probably a wise choice not to think of it as clearing your mind of thoughts, but what we're doing is we're noticing. Not only are we noticing thoughts, we're noticing what's going on in our own bodies, because the first thing that's going to happen to you for any experience is you're going to feel it in the body. Let's take, for example, you're walking by a piece of trash in an office hallway. If you don't turn around and pick it up, you're going to feel that tinge in your body like, oh my gosh, that's wrong, even before your mind thinks about it. So you see a piece of trash in the hallway, your body's going to almost stop because you're really, your values are, I need to go pick up this paper, but your body's going to stop. Then what's going to happen is that seeing that piece of trash is unpleasant. That's the feeling tone. And the brain is saying, I need to go pick this up. And if you don't pick it up, you're not in alignment with yourself. So that's just like the smallest example of self-awareness. But back to the meditation part, we first need to really notice, and I hate to use the word need. It's important.
I know.
Because I don't like need, must, and have to, and
right.
should.
Or should, yes, should.
Right. So we first are invited to notice what is going on with us, and how often do we actually stop to notice what are the physical sensations going on in my body? What are the sounds that I'm hearing? What am I sensing? What's the smell? What am I feeling? What are the thoughts that are going on? And then we can either be aware of it all or anchor our awareness on something like the breath. So that way, when our mind wanders, we can keep on coming back to noticing without judging ourselves, and literally practicing that bicep curl for the brain.
Well, I think if the people who are listening who want to be more self-aware, they could start as soon as they listen to this podcast, hopefully listening to it twice, because I like to have my listeners do that, because there's always something that's missed on the first go-round. But if you don't want to do it today, start tomorrow morning and become aware of your movements when you get out of bed, if you get out of bed, what time you get out of bed, how you feel, what you do, how you feel and what you do. I mean, we do things by habit and pattern. That's just the way we're made. And you're trying to change some of these habits and patterns, but you can't do it unless you acknowledge that you have them.
That's so true. Most people are on autopilot, and even just a few minutes before you grab the phone, before you check your email, before you scroll on autopilot what's going on in the world, it's really a great invitation to take that time in the morning, just a few minutes to really come into presence with yourself. And if you don't remember to do it, set a notification to be the first thing you see on your phone before you check your email and scroll through the menus, or, use an app. There's so many free resources out there to help you do this. And it's not like you have to sit there and meditate for an hour. It literally is that first incremental step of practicing noticing.
Yeah, that's really important, because once you start with that first step, it always takes a first step in anything new and different. You can't start at the second step. You have to start at the first step, because that's where you are. And if you're at the second or third step, you know what you're doing. So at the first step, be aware, in the smallest of senses, be aware of what you're doing. Be aware that it's a habit and a pattern. Years ago, I used to have conduct workshops and retreats on ending all negative habits and patterns, and the connotation was different at the time, but things that were stressful and painful and harmful to the participant is what we were talking about. I had a lot of drug dealers, and I attracted strange people, criminals, drug dealers, abusive people, but people who needed the work. And
you mean my ex-boyfriends, Joanne?
No. I'd never admit that, so somebody could say yes, no. And if they were, they would not be in my class. Believe me. Whatever. Everybody's right. But it was interesting. The people that I attracted people who needed that kind of work, and they had to go a long way to be self-aware. And I think there are a lot of people like that still out there that are not self-aware and they're in pain.
I agree 100%. And there's another company that I'm launching under my business called Naked Mindfulness. And it sounds a little provocative, and it's not really meant to be provocative. It's really stripping away all the thoughts and beliefs that we hold onto so tightly. And when we can strip those away, then we can be really authentically who we are and stop apologizing for the ways we think. And the operative word is think. We fall short because we go around collecting beliefs, and we go around thinking that all of our thoughts in our head are the truth. And one of my favorite stories is about a guy in ancient China who's riding down the road on his horse, and a bystander says, "Where are you going?" And the guy goes, "I don't know, ask the horse."
Oh, God, yes, the horse isn't in charge. Didn't we just talk about that? The horse and the horse is not in charge. You are.
Right. But we think that our thoughts are the drivers because we believe everything we think and everything we feel.
Okay, people, if you're listening, get out your notepad, get out your phone, however you're listening to this, and make a note of this. Your thoughts are not real.
Mm-hmm.
Your thoughts are not real. What you think, just because you think it and you think you're smart, just because you think things, they're not necessarily real. And I say necessarily just to calm everybody's mind out there going, what do you mean my thoughts are not real? I'm smart. She can't tell me that. Well, I just did. And your thoughts are not real. You have to look at your thoughts. That's about being self-aware and mindful. That's on the path.
It really is. It's about be here now. And the thoughts that we have, so many of them are about the future. We have worries, we have fears, we want to control things that we have no control over. And in terms of the past, we have regret, remorse, and guilt. Otherwise, we're just kind of on autopilot. And that is really what suffering is. And of course, there's a well-known statistic that we have 60,000 thoughts a day, and 80% of them tend to be negative because of the negativity bias. And that comes from, early human beings need to survive. They had to be aware of threat. And I know that during this season in our lives, a lot of people are in that, fight, flight mode where they believe that there is a true threat. And it is such a joy to be able to stay in the present because for the most part, and I can't say for everybody, but for the most part, right in this moment, there is something that's okay right now.
Well, I agree with you. I also try to help people who are in great fear and to know that they can look at something in their lives that they are doing right now, even if they're not doing anything, is a safe place for them, for their minds and bodies to be. People just get distracted. I recently wrote an article about distractions. Distraction will take you off your path, and your path is the most important thing, the most important place for you to be, because your path takes you to where you need to be so you can contribute to the people on the planet. And that's what Shelley Brown is talking about. She had catastrophes in her life, and she took another path. And she's here now teaching, because we're all teachers if we're smart about that. If you can all think, those of you who are listening, that you are a teacher, what can you teach? Not how. How is not important, because how is how you act, and that's the way you teach. But what can you teach others? Mm-hmm. So go ahead, Shelley.
I tend to think of myself as an inviter because when I think about extending an invitation to mindfulness, people are going to either RSVP or they're not. So I kind of like to think of myself more of extending an invitation to people to a practice, and it's up to them whether they are going to practice or not. So hopefully more and more people will begin to RSVP to this practice and understand that it isn't maybe what they thought it was.
You can find Shelley Brown at her website at roimindfulness.com. And that ROI is, give me the words, Shelley.
Real-time observations and insights.
Which I think is great because it's also about return on investment. And if you invest in mindfulness, you're investing in real-time observations. So if you really want to get a hold of Shelley really quickly, and it depends on where if you're reading this and listening to it on my website, you can get in touch with her. It's Shelley Brown, that's SHELLEY Brown at roimindfulness.com. And what will they find on your website, Shelley?
A lot of different offerings, but really I do like to curate based on the organization's needs. And one other thing I'd like to add is a lot of companies have it as a checklist item, and mindfulness is actually a lot more robust than one seminar or one session. It's literally a much more nuanced program and investment than let me understand what this is and we'll cross it off the HR list or the offering list, if that makes sense.
It makes sense to me. I hope it makes sense to our audience. So again, I will suggest that those who are listening, listen to this podcast again and take notes. You might have missed something. I guarantee you did. And take notes. Share this podcast with friends, family, loved ones, or if you have a job and you are at work, remotely or otherwise, share it with your coworkers, share it with your supervisors, your directors, and depends on how high up you can go to your C-suite of presidents and vice presidents, etc. Maybe even the board of directors, because you have all the power. I want to thank Shelley Brown for being here today. Again, roimindfulness.com, roimindfulness.com. So Shelley, do you have a last word for our audience?
My last word is, what can presence do for you?
There you go, people. What can presence do for you? Thank you, Shelley, for being here. And I want to also remind people to go to my website. My new, refined, reorganized, repurposed website is now live. And you will see that I talk about dealing with true calling, helping people who need to find their true calling. This is Joanne Victoria and Shelley Brown saying thank you and goodbye for today. Take care, people.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Sanity Project podcast. Please go to AskJoanneVictoria.com to listen to more podcasts. Check out Joanne's coaching programs and get a free copy of her report, 5 Steps to Achieve Life-Work Harmony. That's AskJoanneVictoria.com. Take care, and thanks for being here.